owners into business investors. I'm going to try and get through to you in what I think is about half an hour, Karen, is that right? 40 minutes. With questions, you're welcome to throw questions at me as we go. I'm going to hopefully give you some stats on where the New Zealand marketplace is in terms of businesses, business owners Karen talked about, that are going to be selling their businesses through the baby boomers. I'm going to throw some hard numbers at you, we've done some research on. I'm going to give you an idea of what Platform 1 does. I'm going to give you 4 case studies, and I'm going to give you a video of a case study. Hopefully by the end of it, I'll have got to my goal, which is so that you understand what we're doing, and hopefully how we can perhaps help solve it. So, typical client profile is a business owner who are thinking in the short, medium to long term, spend possibly too much time on stuff they don't like to do in their businesses, would like to take some money off the table, and are concerned that they will not realise the accumulated wealth of their businesses Karen alluded to before. So, Platform 1, we call it leadership transition. I don't talk about succession because I don't think succession is a particularly good word. I'm a business owner myself, and I like to think of my ability to transition out of my business rather than succession. So I use that leadership transition terminology quite a bit. So it's an alternative to a trade sale, and it's a means to grow the business while also creating an ability to step back, opportunity to transition as a set option. Selling a good business, and simply understand less than you might normally get. So hopefully I'll get through. We can make the business a hell of a lot more capital. You can get a hell of a lot more capital out of the business. So here's some hard numbers. We got some research out of the States about 10 years ago, which talked about the US economy being about 80 to 90% SMEs, and I thought that number was pretty true in New Zealand, so I got some research done in New Zealand, and bingo, we're about the same as the US. Most of those business owners are baby boomers, and 10 years ago, they were 10 years younger obviously, but it said that in the next 20 years they're going to want to get out of their businesses. And the only thing that they thought about doing was, or most of them thought about doing, was to sell it in a trade sale. And being an ex-accountant, nowhere near as good as Monteck, that's a really bad way to sell a business. Due diligence is taking longer than it normally does. It's being more intensive. The process is the gap between buyer and seller is getting wider and wider, and it's a hard way to sell a business. So I thought, we're an executive search firm. How can we use our skills to give these business owners a better opportunity than a trade sale? So, because these businesses are going to sell. I mean, we're all going to, what is it, taxes and death? We're all going to die one day. So they are going to transition, they are going to sell, something's going to happen. So, I got down the bottom, and you probably won't like that, but your business is not unique. It is just a business. It is not a son or a daughter. It is just a business. And that's one thing I'd like to get across to people, because I've got a couple of 3 businesses, and I feel like they're my family. But at the end of the day, all they are an ability to fund their lifestyle. That's all they are. They're not sons and daughters. Now, Karen also alluded to the fact that if all these business owners are going to sell their businesses, who the heck's going to buy them? And I thought, if the baby boomers are all retiring, who's coming behind them? So we went out to the University of Auckland and did a white paper with them and got some research done around what's happening behind the baby boomers. And guess what? That's the trend of people coming behind the baby boomers. It's not just business people who are looking to sell businesses to people, it's our leaders in commerce, in corporates. Who the heck's going to run these businesses? There's a gap of about 40,000 people through our research. So, sell or sell down? A survey done by Kiwibank said that half of the owners would like to sell down. Better part what provides value, enabling them to take money off the table, step back, work on the business, running the business, as you've probably heard a million times. But there's no awareness of the options. There's business brokers, and that's about it. The banks and chartered accounting firms, the progressive ones, possibly have some other ideas, but generally they're talking about selling the business, and that's kind of the only option So we've done a flow chart here, and all I'm going to talk about is those three top boxes. We have to start with the business owner seeking to change and willing to change. And trust me, seeking change and willing to change isn't necessarily put in the same box. Because as you all know, you are probably all as business owners looking to seek change, but you need to be willing to change, and that is the hard part. The business has to have unrealised potential. So what I'm going to describe to you is how you can grow your capital wealth out of your business. So it has to have unrealised potential, and it has to have profitability in it to support what we're going to do. So, platform one, what are we doing? Executive search firm SAP Group, I started in 2000, and about 3 years later I took about that piece of research, and I thought, there's got to be a way to give business owners another option other than trade sale. So I devised platform one, and I call it leadership transition. Basically we use an executive search process. So the first thing we do is we assess the owner's desires and business needs, and they're not necessarily the same thing. It's a process that we take probably 3 to 4 hours to go through. The business's value, we don't do it. We would get Karen and her team to cover the value of the business. And then we get a good understanding of what the business needs to grow. Because what we're trying to do is get this business to go from X amount of dollars to X plus and the profitability to track along with it. So we need to know what the skills of the business are lacking for us to be able to do that. And then we go out and do an executive search. So we tap people on the shoulder. Now we don't throw an ad on the seat to get people, first people that come along. We do it in an executive search way. So I'm tapping people on the shoulders who have no idea that we do this, and they have no idea that they want to buy a business. And I convince them to buy a business. So even if they saw an ad, they wouldn't read it because they wouldn't understand that this is what it is. It's a very intensive process, and it's one-on-one. I have to take them out, wine them and dine them, and convince them that this is the right opportunity for them. The business is valued, and they get an option to purchase 25% of the business after 12 to 18 months at the value that we set at the beginning. So the first 25% after 12 to 18 months, that's the carrot. I can pull a person out of Fletcher's who's earning 300 or 400,000 and go and one of your businesses and pay them 100 or 120, 150,000 because the 25% is the carrot. That will get them interested. They won't come work for you for 120,000 and come run. Now, when we first started doing this, we thought, gee, we're on something really good here. We did 5 or 6 of these, and a couple fell over. And I thought, hey, what's going on? So when I analysed it, basically, we had one piece of the puzzle missing. There was no structure for accountability, and the accountability had to be in governance structure. So what I advise is we insist that there's got to be an advisor that sits over the process. And the advisor is generally not necessarily old, but a wise head, somebody who's probably worked in the industry, and they act as a bit of a sounding board to both the owner and the general manager. They have 3 jobs. So that's their first job. The second job is to put in some very simple governance structures into the business, including KPIs to grow. And the third is to make sure that that 25% deal happens. Because the 25, what you're trying to do is transition out of the business from an equity perspective and grow it. So that 25% is very important. Once that happens, you're pretty much, the marriage has been consummated. Now, the deal is not a sale purchase agreement. It is a memorandum of understanding, and it's an agreement to agree. So if after 12 months you don't like the person or they're not the right person, you don't do the deal. So once you've done the deal, you know and think that they're the right person to come in and take your business to where it needs to go. So I've got 4 case studies here, and I've got a video hopefully on this. So the first case study is a company we did in print. It was a print management business. It was turning over about 8 million, and it was making about $1 million. So it was a very profitable business. A couple of owners, both of them really wanted to get out of the business. They were going to sell it, and we talked to them about Platform 1, and they agreed to do it. And they said, you'll never find anybody. And we found a guy out of the US, an advertising agency, who came into the business. And not quite a genius, but he managed to secure a customer that they'd been trying for quite a while. And the reason why they couldn't secure it was because of personality. So this guy came in and said, look, I'm running a company now. He got $1 million worth of revenue within, I think, about 8 or 9 months, which made the business worth $7.2 million instead of $4 million when he purchased his 25% for $1 million. In 3 years, well, go down to the bottom line. The owner's capital return over 6 years was $8.5 million and $8 million in dividends. So he basically got 4 times more than what he thought the business was worth right at the beginning. Case study 2 was it's a GJ Garden franchise. I don't tell anybody I told you that. It's up in Rodney, and the chap who owns it has the master franchise for Victoria. And he was spending most of his time in Victoria, and the Rodney business was suffering. So he got a hold of us, and we found a chap who had qualified as a civil engineer, recently overseen the expansion of a private hospital. So really good credentials. Came into the business, I think the business was turning out $12 million at the time. This is about 10 years ago. He took 25%, worked up to 45 after 10 years, and took the business up to $40 million in revenue and significant profit. I'm not sure exactly what profit was, but he decided to buy a shareholder in the master franchise, and we did a second generation. So we did another update in 2013, about 18 months ago, and the guy who's gone in there is an ex-retail banker from Westpac, and he's apparently doing pretty well. Case study 3 is a body corporate organisation that I did, that the owner had come in, that had started, and he'd grown 25% year on year, but he got to the stage where he was just, he had enough of managing people and growth and everything. He was a lawyer, he still is a lawyer actually, and what's a lawyer, still a lawyer. Criticize lawyers, but he loved the law and he loved doing that stuff. So he came to us. We found him a person who had done a number of property deals, had some property. He was also a lawyer. Came into the business, took 25%. But the thing that I really liked is unsolicited. He said to us that quote down the bottom, "We're delighted and impressed with the outcome, and this has proven to be an extremely successful commercial arrangement." In case study number 4, it's a horticultural business down the Bay of Plenty, and chap who owned it had grown it from his backyard, and it was really a business that was just him. He was the sole relationship person for the business, and he didn't think we had a show in heck of finding somebody who would come under. We found a person who came from a rural dairy supplier, and I think after about 4 months, he threw him the keys and said, go to it. But the thing that really planted in my brain, the thing that he said to us, he said his income from the business has outperformed any other investment he might have invested in the proceeds if he had done an outright sale. And that's the key. We're trying to create wealth here with an asset that you have that possibly isn't realising its full potential. Now, I hope this video works. Is it speak wrong?
And we grew that business through, so Kingsley was a very small retail operation which I acquired, Cheryl I acquired 28 years ago. Had a turnover in those days of $250,000 a year turnover. And we grew that sure that the processes were run professionally, properly. It was a huge relief. So it was a pleasurable experience, which, you know, it's really exciting, but it's also, you don't get away, so it's, you know, it has to keep cool with it. First surprise of the candidates. And I couldn't believe it. So that was the first surprise. Gosh, is there many people around New Zealand that would be interested in my business? So that was a significant surprise. Look at my body language. So, transformation. Really. So, really difficult to walk out of this office and put someone else in there who has no experience, and I think it's the exciting thing bringing somebody in there completely green, knows nothing about the business, but has the management style skills necessary to take it forward. So I found that extraordinarily difficult. So walking out of the office was tough. And the agreement, the general agreement was that I would stay for the first month, work with Robin on a daily basis, each and every